Okay, I'm going to get started this morning by just welcoming all of you guys. Sawadee-kap, welcome. Welcome to everyone here. Welcome to Wat Tung. Welcome to all of you guys that are here, and welcome to everyone who's joining us online as well. Today is a class that will help you guys to learn the teachings of the Buddha, and we start with meditation in order to help us get going in our practice. The meditation that the Buddha taught is designed to help train your mind to acquire certain wholesome qualities and eliminate certain unwholesome qualities from your mind. So I'm going to share with you guys breathing mindfulness meditation, teaching you guys a little bit about what that is just by actually doing it. And then from there, we'll move into our class today. So the way that I start with meditation is I start with chanting to ease us into meditation. And these chants are something that we do just to kind of ease the mind into meditation. During the lifetime of the Buddha, they used chanting as a way to commit the teachings to memory, that during his life, everything that he taught was oral. He just spoke and people needed to remember his teachings. So they used the chants as a way to commit the teachings to memory. Once every 2 weeks, his students would come together and they would do chanting as a way to commit the teachings to memory. Nowadays, we don't need to chant in order to commit the teachings to memory because we have books and videos and podcasts and things like this. Steve's handing out these laminated sheets, which has the chants on them. These chants are in the Pali language. This is the language that the teachings of the Buddha are captured in. When you're doing these chants, if you decide to do them, it's important to understand that they're not a rite or ritual or a ceremony or worship. It's not a prayer or anything like that. It really is just to help ease the mind into meditation, because as you guys heard, during the lifetime of the Buddha, he didn't use chanting for anything other than to help his students commit the teachings to memory. But nowadays, sometimes people think things like this have a mystical, magical thing to it or something like that, but that's not actually true. What you'll benefit from actually chanting is it'll ease your mind into meditation, and you'll actually get more benefit out of the meditation itself. If you read the English translations of these chants, you can see there's a lot of admiration and respect and gratitude for the Buddha. I suspect that the Buddha didn't actually create these chants himself, because by the time you get to enlightenment, which a Buddha is enlightened, they would have eliminated their ego, their arrogance, their boastfulness, their pride. Buddha doesn't walk around and teach other people to chant things to them because they consider themselves to be equal. They don't put themselves above others or below others. So these chants were most likely created by his students either during his life or after his death. Because what a Buddha does is they share teachings with others that help you get to this enlightened mental state. A Buddha discovers how to get to enlightenment by themselves. What enlightenment is where the mind is peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. You no longer experience any anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, boredom, loneliness, shyness, resentment, jealousy. Even the slightest displeasure is eliminated from the enlightened mind. You'll notice this focus and concentration, clarity of mind, deep memory. You'll notice that your personal and professional relationships will really blossom because you won't have this hostility and bitterness and animosity in your relationships. By the time you train your mind to get to enlightenment, you'll always be in a good mood. You'll never experience a bad mood any longer. Your mind is in this permanent mental state where it's peaceful and joyful permanently for the rest of your life. So if you learn from a teacher who didn't want anything from you, who didn't expect anything from you, who didn't ask anything of you, and they helped you move from this anger and frustration and other discontent feelings, the stress and anxiety, over to this peaceful and joyful mental state, you'd probably have a lot of gratitude and respect for that person too. So the students, I suspect, created these chants during the lifetime of the Buddha or after his death. But just keep in mind that it's not a rite or ritual or ceremony or worship. It's not prayer or anything like that. The benefit is that it just eases your mind into meditation and you get more benefit out of the meditation itself. So I'm going to start with these chants, and you guys are welcome to join along if you'd like to chant along. Then once we get into the meditation, I will start guiding you, kind of giving you some guidance of how to actually meditate. This is an opportunity for you to learn how to meditate by actually doing it. Then there'll be a period of time where we'll just all be meditating. Those of you guys here and all of you guys at home, we'll just all be meditating together. And then after we meditate, then I'll come out of the meditation with some more chanting as well. And just to give you guys a heads up on some positioning of their body that might be helpful for you, is there's actually 4 positions of meditation that the Buddha taught. He taught seated, lying, standing, and walking, because you can't be in the same position permanently. Oftentimes when students are learning, they're learning in the seated position, either on the floor or in a chair. We have chairs if you'd like to make yourself comfortable with a chair. Being on the floor, since most of you guys or all of you guys are on the floor, usually people like to have a cushion under their rear, and some people even like to put their legs off the mat. You'd like to just lightly cross your legs because that'll allow the circulation to flow. And if you decide to put your feet off the mat, this gets your hips up in the air and it lessens the angle at the hips, the knees, and the ankles, which allows the circulation to flow. Whereas if your legs were real tight, it might impede the circulation and you'll notice pain during the meditation. If you notice any pain in the body, you would like to shift your body position or change your position so that you're in a different position. Because if you're just experiencing pain throughout the meditation, it would be very challenging for you to actually train your mind to cultivate wholesome qualities and eliminate certain unwholesome qualities. So if you need more cushions or you need a chair or anything like this, feel free to help yourself to whatever you need to feel comfortable. And then with your hands and arms, the Buddha put his right hand over his left with his thumbs together, and he put this into his lap. If this is comfortable for you, you could use it. But this practice isn't about everybody doing it exactly the same way, because everybody's body is a little bit different. It's not possible for everybody to do things exactly the same. So you would like to find what's comfortable for you. Some people like to put their palms on their thighs or on their knees. Some people like to put their palms up. I've even seen people just put their hands in their lap. So whatever is comfortable for you. Again, it's not about everybody doing it exactly the same way. The upper body you would like to be erect, whereas if you were slouched, the mind would have a tendency to be dull or lethargic. Whereas if you were real rigid, the mind could be overactive or uptight. So you'd like the upper body to be erect, to be able to keep the mind attentive and alert during the meditation. And also by having your shoulders back and your sternum up, it allows you to breathe in nice and gradually through the nose. So I'm going to ease us into meditation with some chanting. You guys are welcome to join along. And then I'm going to come back with some guidance to be able to help you understand how to meditate. Okay. Arahang Samma Sambuddha Mahakawa Wat Tung Mahakawanhang Apivateyami Savakato Mahakawata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Mahakavato Savaka Sangho Sanghang Namami Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti pisu Mahakava Arahang Samma Sambuddha Vicacaranang Sammuno Sakatoro Kawitu Anutero Purisa Namasati satatava manusanam Poto Bhagavati. Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, and the upper body erect, just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath. A nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then, whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to your next inhale, breathing gradually through the nose, establishing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then, whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Once the breath is well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. อะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธมหาเกวาพุทธังมหาเกวันหังอภิวาเตมิสวากขาโตมหาเกวตาธัมโมธัมมังนามัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนมหาเกวโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินับโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนับโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนับโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมหาเกวาอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธ วิชาจารนังสัมมุโนสกาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาดามาสติสตาตาวาปานุสนังโพโตภาควาติ Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation, I will once again welcome all of you guys, those of you guys here, those of you guys online, those that joined us since we started meditating. Welcome to all of you guys. Today is what we call our Pali Canon and English study group, where we study the original words of the Buddha in more of a study group format, where all the other classes, courses, and retreats that I share, it's more of a traditional style of learning, where I'll be teaching, and then kind of every 15, 20 minutes or so, I open up for questions from students. But in this program on Saturdays, we do it a little bit differently. I'll explain that to you guys here in a moment. But before we get into that, I thought I would share with you guys a little bit about this meditation. This meditation is called Breathing Mindfulness Meditation. It's designed to help you cultivate the wholesome qualities of mindfulness or awareness of mind, concentration, or being able to focus and have clarity of mind. And it's training the mind to eliminate what's called craving, desire, attachment. This is an unwholesome quality in the unenlightened mind. Essentially, what the Buddha did is he discovered 10 individual pollutions in the unenlightened mind that are hindering it from being able to experience that peace, calm, serenity, contentedness, and joy. And when you uproot these pollutions out of the mind, you'll see that you no longer experience any anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, boredom, loneliness, shyness, resentment, jealousy. Like I mentioned, even the slightest displeasure is eliminated from the mind. You're always in a good mood. But as long as these pollutions are in the mind, an individual will continue to experience these discontent feelings. Oftentimes we think that it's something external, or that it's somebody else that's causing you to be angry, or you might think somebody else is annoying you, or something else is frustrating you. But all of this is actually occurring inside the mind. When you understand what these pollutions are and you uproot them, you can actually see that it's your own mind that's causing your discontent feelings. It's not other people that are causing you to be angry and frustrated and irritated. It's your own mind that's doing that. And when you learn this through the teachings of the Buddha, you can reflect on it to independently verify that it's true, and then you can practice and see that as you uproot these pollutions, it produces a peaceful and joyful mind. So the teachings of the Buddha is not about believing a bunch of things and then hoping something good happens when you die. You're learning, you're examining, you're investigating his teachings, you're reflecting on them to independently verify whether they're true or whether they're false, and then you're practicing them in order to uproot these pollutions and train the mind to get to this peace and this joy, so the brightness and the radiance of the enlightened mind can shine through. So meditation is a certain component of that practice that you would develop in order to transform the mind. And in order to transform the mind, you need mindfulness. You need awareness of mind, because oftentimes in the unenlightened state, we go through life and we don't necessarily know what's going on in our own mind. You're maybe bombarded by all these thoughts and all these feelings and all these different things going on in your mind, and you may not even be aware of what's going on in your mind. So you'll need to cultivate the mindfulness or awareness of mind in order to purify the mind. And you'll need focus and concentration. So this meditation is helping you to do that by having the mind focus on the breath. You're essentially exercising the mind in meditation, developing this awareness and this concentration. And then whenever the mind moves off the breath, you're cutting that off, letting it go, and bringing the mind back to the breath. You're gaining this control or this discipline of the mind. Because when your mind's angry and it's frustrated, you don't have control over your mind. But if you gradually train your mind, you can get to the point where you can control your mind, and it'll never experience any anger or sadness or other frustrations or any of these other discontent feelings. So this meditation, it isn't to eliminate your thoughts. Sometimes people think that when they hear the guidance, they think that it's to eliminate your thoughts. But as long as you're alive, you're going to have thoughts. So it's not to eliminate your thoughts. It's to build this awareness of mind or mindfulness. It's to build this concentration and to be able to train your mind so that you can control it, so that when it moves off the breath, you can cut that off and let it go. So in meditation, you're exercising the mind. You're cutting off anything and everything that comes up. And why this is so beneficial is that in daily life, when you're noticing the anger starting to arise, when you're noticing the frustration or other discontent feelings, even the guilt, the shame, the fear, the stress, the anxiety, the boredom, the loneliness, any of these discontent feelings, if you can notice that with your mindfulness or awareness of mind, you can then cut it off and let it go. If you've disciplined your mind, if you train in your mind, if you're exercising it in daily life, your mind will be more controlled and you'll be able to cut those feelings off and let them go, not allowing the mind to be bombarded with all these discontent feelings. And now you can protect the mind. And eventually, if you do this enough, both in meditation and outside of meditation, and implement all the other teachings that the Buddha shares, you'll get to that point where the mind's enlightened and you'll only experience peace and joy. You won't experience any discontent feelings. Anger no longer arises because you've eliminated the conditions that are causing it. The frustration, the sadness, the stress, anxiety, the guilt and shame, the loneliness, the boredom, it never arises anymore once you eliminate the conditions that are causing it. So this meditation is key in order to help you accomplish that. But then in daily life, you only cut off the unwholesome thoughts that are arising. In meditation, you're cutting off anything and everything that comes up because you're trying to train your mind, you're trying to exercise the mind. But then in daily life, you're only cutting off the unwholesome thoughts that come up in the mind. It's kind of like a professional athlete. A professional athlete, like say a pole vaulter, they're going to have a sport of pole vaulting. And when they go into the gym, they're probably going to do weight training, cardiovascular training, agility training. Their training is going to look very different than their sport. But they use those qualities that they've built in the gym in order to help them in their sport so they can actually be really good at pole vaulting. And the same thing is true when you're training the mind, is you're exercising the mind in one way using meditation, and then in daily life, you're practicing slightly different. In daily life, you're practicing mindfulness or awareness of mind, and then when you're aware of anything unwholesome coming into the mind, you cut that off and let it go. But you wouldn't be able to do that if you're not regularly training your mind. Your mind will be undisciplined and uncontrolled, and your mind will get bombarded with these various thoughts. So if during this meditation you had a bombardment of thoughts, this is very normal, particularly when you're first starting in meditation. You might get this bombardment of thoughts. This is very normal. You're not bad at meditation. It's just that your mind is untrained or undisciplined. Or you might have had a thought and then you indulged in that thought for a period of time and you kind of followed it and followed it and followed it. And maybe 2 or 3 minutes into it, you're like, oh yeah, that's right, I'm meditating. Let me bring my mind back. And you started bringing your mind back, right? So these two things are very common when you're first getting started. But as you train more and more with this meditation, you'll be able to control your mind more and more. By the time you get to enlightenment, you'll still have thoughts in your meditation, but it'll be occasional thoughts, where in the unenlightened state, you either get bombarded with thoughts or you'll have a thought and you'll indulge in it for a period of time. In the enlightened mental state, when you have a thought, you'll notice it right away and you'll be able to easily cut it off and let it go. And then you'll get these periods of quietness and stillness in the mind in between these thoughts, which you don't typically get very much in the unenlightened state. So if you're interested in eliminating all these discontent feelings that are coming up and causing you to experience difficulties and struggles, even unskillful conduct where you're being bitter and harsh and hostile to people in your daily life, you can actually train the mind to eliminate all that. Because in the unenlightened state, the mind misunderstands what's really causing your anger. You'll tend to think that somebody else or something external is causing your anger and your frustration and your sadness. And what you'll typically do is you'll push those people away out of your life, or you'll push the situation out of your life. And you think that that might solve the problem, but it doesn't actually solve the problem because you just get angry or irritated or annoyed about something else. It's only a matter of time. If that was the real problem, when you push those people or you push that situation frustration out of your life, you wouldn't get angry anymore. You'd be peaceful and joyful. So that's how you know that it's not the real problem. It's not mom or dad or brothers or sisters, your children or a life partner. It's not them that's causing you to be angry. So if you push these people out of your life, it's not going to solve your problem. Or the other thing the unenlightened mind does when it misunderstands the problem is it'll become bitter and harsh and hostile towards people. With your intentions, your speech, and your actions, you might feel justified in your anger and feel like this person deserves that. But this doesn't solve the problem either. When you're bitter and harsh and hostile to people, that just comes back to you. People become bitter and harsh and hostile with you. Or the third thing you'll do when you misunderstand the problem is you'll put your expectations on people, and you'll try to control people to get things done your way, because you have what's called craving, desire, attachment in the mind, this longing, this yearning, this wanting things to be a certain way. And if you get things your way, you'll get pleasant feelings like happiness, excitement, elation, thrill, exhilaration, euphoria. But you can't permanently get things your way. It's not possible. So when you get things your way, you might experience those pleasant feelings. But then when you don't get things your way, you experience these painful feelings, this anger, this sadness, this frustration, and all the others. So it's this craving, this desire, this longing, this yearning, wanting things to be a certain way. And the unenlightened mind can only be happy when it gets things that way. This is what's called conditional happiness, is that you base your happiness on some condition. Like if it's sunny outside, you'll be happy. But then because that's conditional happiness, that happiness arises, it changes, and it fades away. And then when it rains, you'll be angry or frustrated. Or if your bank account is at this balance, you'll be happy. But then when it goes down, you'll be sad or frustrated or irritated, because that's conditional happiness. It's based on some condition. So as long as you allow your mind to form inner feelings based on some condition, your mind's going to be going up and down and up and down and up and down. And this can be really exhausting throughout your day, that if you get to the end of your day, or even at the beginning of your day, if you feel completely exhausted, this is the mind craving and longing, yearning, and wanting things a certain way. And if you get what you want, you'll feel happy and excited. But if you don't get what you want, you'll feel sad and maybe even dull or lethargic. But you can uproot all of this from your mind. You can eradicate these pollutions of the mind and get to the point where your mind's liberated and it's free and you're experiencing the peace and the joy all the time. But the unenlightened mind doesn't know how to do this. That's where a Buddha comes in. A Buddha figures this out on their own, and then they share their teachings with others to be able to help them to be able to discover what it takes to purify your mind. So if somebody's interested in getting rid of this anger and sadness and frustration and all these discontent feelings, getting to the peace and joy, they might choose to come to a temple, meet with a teacher, spend time in classes, courses, and retreats, learning about the path to enlightenment. They train their mind with meditation and other techniques. And nowadays, these teachings are available to you at no cost. All the books are available at no cost. You can download them for free. You can take them and go print them. You can get printed copies by just reimbursing us for our printing cost. You can come to classes, courses, and retreats at no cost. You can even get personal guidance and other help at no cost to be able to help you learn how to train your mind and get to this enlightened mental state. So this particular class, called the Pali Canon and English Study Group, what it is, it's a study group where students are learning volumes 2 through 13 of this book series that I share. I have another program called the Group Learning Program, which meets on Sundays and Wednesdays. And I do it here at the temple at 9 a.m. And then I go home at night and I do it at 9 p.m. as well. And I live stream both of these classes. So no matter where you are in the world, you can get access to a live class. And then as you're learning and you're developing your practice in that group learning program, that's to help you build a foundation or a framework to understand the foundational teachings on the path to enlightenment. And we use volume 1 of the book series. It's titled Developing a Life Practice, The Path That Leads to Enlightenment. That's a 7-month program that students will typically go through over a period of 7 months. And we're getting ready to restart that program, but you can really join it at any time. We're restarting it in March. And like I mentioned, you can start it at any time. And usually students will study in that program first, or one of our other foundational courses or retreats or something like that. And then they'll move into this Pali Canon and English study group, where now you study exclusively with the words of the Buddha through volumes 2 through 13. We're now in volume 11, and this particular program is also on Saturday at 9 a.m. and 9 p.m., and it takes a year and a half to complete this program, where you learn all the teachings of the Buddha through his original words from what's called the Pali Canon. The Pali Canon is the original source teachings of the Buddha. They're in 45 volumes of books that are about this thick. And what we've done is we've consolidated that into a smaller collection of books so that it's digestible and a student can actually learn it and understand it and then practice it. But his teachings, they're not based in belief whatsoever. It's always about learning, reflecting, and practicing. The book that we're in now, it's volume 11. It's titled The Realms of Existence. By the time someone gets to this point in their development, they've usually been studying with me for a good year and a half, 2 years, because this particular book is about the cycle of rebirth. Even the cycle of rebirth is independently verifiable. The Buddha taught various realms. He taught about hell, the animal realm, the afflicted spirit realm, the human realm, and the heavenly realm. But these realms were never used as a way to guilt, shame, or fear anybody into understanding his teachings or learning his teachings. He's explaining the way the world is. He's not explaining the way the world should be. And then if everybody learns and practices his teachings, then everybody would be, peaceful. He's not explaining the way the world should be. He's not giving you rules or commandments to follow. He's explaining to you the way the world is. He's helping you understand the natural laws of existence. And by you understanding the world you live in, then you'll navigate this world more readily. But when you live in a world that you don't understand, you'll struggle and you'll have difficulties. That's what that anger and sadness and frustration is alerting you to. It's alerting you that you don't have the wisdom that you need in order to navigate this world peacefully. This is why the mind's becoming angry and frustrated and irritated, because your mind's struggling and having difficulties living in a world that it doesn't understand. So the Buddha teaches you these natural laws as a way to help you understand the world around you. And the realms of existence are part of that, because as you're lifting these pollutions out of the mind and your mind's becoming more awake or more enlightened, you're moving to this higher consciousness. It's not uncommon for an individual to be able to observe their past lives and see their past lives, or to have contact with beings in the realms of hell, animal, afflicted spirit, of course, the human realm, and the heavenly realm. And if you didn't understand these 5 realms and you started observing your past lives in any of these 5 realms, or you started experiencing communication from beings in any of these realms, you would probably be pretty shaken up by that because you're not understanding the world that you live in. So the Buddha is teaching you about the world you live in and helping you to be able to then navigate this world. But just understand that what we're going to be studying today, it's about the realms of existence, and we're actually studying the heavenly realm at this point. We've already studied the hell realm, the animal realm, the afflicted spirits, the human realm, and the chapters that we have to talk about today are based on the heavenly realm. And the way that I do this program, is I invite you guys here at the temple and those of you guys in Zoom to be able to read one of these chapters. And these chapters are actually quite short. You can see right here to the line. It's just a couple of paragraphs. And it'll take you all of about a minute to read that. So I invite you guys here and those of you guys on Zoom to be able to read this chapter out loud. And then after somebody reads it, then I will share some teachings on that particular chapter for maybe 5 minutes or so, 10 minutes. And then I'll open up to any and all questions that you guys have related to this particular chapter. And then we just go chapter by chapter. This is more of a study group. Again, this isn't where students typically will start, but even if this is your first time ever to a temple and you've never learned the teachings of the Buddha, I will teach you in a way that you'll gain some benefit out of these teachings. But typically what students will do is they'll start either in the group learning program or one of our other foundational programs to be able to help them build a framework or a foundation in the path to enlightenment. And then they'll move into studying the original words of the Buddha so that you can understand what he's actually teaching. In these books, you have the words of the Buddha, which you see here. Then you have a reference. This takes you back to the original source teachings of the Buddha so that you can understand in the Pali Canon and from the original source text what he actually taught. Because this here that I'm sharing is just an excerpt. So he was talking about something before this, and he was talking about something after this. But I've kind of extracted a certain piece in order to be able to help you to understand what he was actually teaching. So this is the reference that goes back to the original source, so you can have confidence that what I'm sharing with you here is the original teachings, and then you can see what he was talking about before and after if you would like to explore that. Then what you've got is you've got words from me to be able to help you reflect on what the Buddha is teaching so that you can understand how to implement it into your life and gain benefit out of it. Because some of these teachings, when you're learning with the words of the Buddha, it's connected to other teachings. And if you don't know what those other teachings are, you wouldn't necessarily understand how to reflect on that particular teaching. So you've got the words of the Buddha, you got a reference, you've got words from a dedicated practitioner and teacher to be able to guide you through. And students will oftentimes read these either before class or after class. And then when we come to class, we study it together in order to help you guys to understand the words of the Buddha in this path to enlightenment. Now, this whole area of the cycle of rebirth, when someone's first starting on the path to enlightenment, I suggest they set it to the side, because what happened in the past, it's in the past. It doesn't really matter. And what may or may not happen in the future, it's in the future. It hasn't happened yet. Right now, you're in the human state, and this is the most ideal existence to be in, because you can actually train your mind to get to enlightenment. Whereas if you were an animal, you don't have the capability to learn and develop your mind and train your mind in the same way as a human being. Those animals will eventually make their way into the human realm with an opportunity to get to enlightenment. But here in the human realm, you have the opportunity that you can train your mind. So what's happened in the past is in the past. What may or may not happen in the future is in the future. Learning the cycle of rebirth and independently verifying it isn't usually something that somebody starts with on their journey to enlightenment. There's core central teachings that you need to learn in order to develop your mind, uproot these pollutions, and actually get your mind to have less and less discontentedness. Meditation is one of those things. So that's why we start with meditation for each class. But if you guys are interested in learning some of those core central teachings, we have other programs and other retreats and courses where you can do that either here at the temple or online as you travel. So what I'd like to do is see if you guys have any questions about anything that I just shared. Is there anything that you guys would like to ask about anything that I just shared? See if we have questions online. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions here or online. What I'm going to do is I'm going to transition over to inviting you guys to study the words of the Buddha if you would like to. For those of you guys that are here at the temple, if this is your first time here, I'd like to let you know there's a bathroom in the back of the room. It's the very last door on the right. You're welcome to get up and use the restroom at any time. We even have water here that is provided by our students that you're welcome to help yourself to. There's even a larger bathroom outside the classroom. If you go outside the classroom and you follow the signs, it'll take you to the main temple bathroom. So you can feel free to make yourself comfortable, make yourself at home. You can relax and just enjoy and enjoy learning the teachings of the Buddha if that's what you would like to do. Is there somebody who would like to read this first chapter here? Edmund, you would like to read? Sure. If you could get a microphone there, that way the people online will be able to hear you. So those of you guys, as you have questions or you'd like to read, we have these microphones so the people online can hear, and we can hear you here as well. There's a gray switch on the front. You just press that and the light comes on, and then the light's going to go off, and you just hold the microphone up to your chin, and then we'll be able to hear you here at the temple, and the people online will be able to hear you as well.
Where heavenly beings take up lodging. Ananda, who is building a fortress at Pali Canon? Fortunate one, Sunita and Vasakara, the Magadhan ministers, are building a fortress against the Vajans. Ananda, just as if they had taken counsel with the 33 gods, Sunita and Vasakara are building a fortress at Pali Canon. I have seen with my divine eye, third eye, how thousands of heavenly beings were taking up lodging there. And in the parts where powerful heavenly beings settled, they caused the minds of the most powerful royal officials to pick those sites for their dwellings And where middle and lower ranking heavenly beings settled, so too they caused the minds of royal officials of corresponding grade to pick those sites for their dwellings. Ananda, as far as the Aryan Indo-Iranian people land extends, as far as its trade extends, this will be the chief city. Pataliputra, scattering its seeds far and wide. And Pataliputra will face 3 dangers, from fire, from water, and from internal conflict.
Okay, thank you, Edmund. So this is just a short little discourse here. There were some others prior to this, where what the Buddha is doing is he's helping people to understand this realm of the heavenly beings and what goes on in these heavenly realms. These 5 realms that we talk about, hell, the animal, the afflicted spirit, human, and heavenly realm. Sometimes people think of these realms as being like really far away, like the hell realm deep down in the earth and the heavenly realm way up in the sky somewhere. But these beings are actually all in the same time and space. Just like there's a human being that's sitting in this chair right now, there could be an animal that sits here at some point too. Like there's no, the animal is not far away in some distant land. It's right here in the same time and space as human beings. And this heavenly realm, the afflicted spirit realm, and the heavenly realm is the same way, that they're all within the same time and space of each other. And these beings can all interact with each other. And the Buddha is teaching you about these different realms so that you can understand these different realms and what consists of these realms and how one might be reborn there and what beings experience in these various realms. These realms are not permanent. Once you're born into the hell realm or in the heavenly realm, it's not a permanent existence. Nothing around you is permanent. Everything you see around you is impermanent. This is a universal truth of impermanence. Oftentimes people are taught that these realms are permanent, but they're not permanent. You can see everything around you is impermanent. This is a natural law. This is a universal truth. So these realms are impermanent as well. And there's no being that's overseeing the world and then judging others and deciding who goes to what realm and who goes to another realm. And then you're permanently there in that realm. That's not the way this works. You're not being judged over the totality of your life. What's happening is the mind has certain pollutions in the mind. And then if you have what's called craving, desire, attachment at the end of your life, this is the cause or the fuel that leads to rebirth. Just like a fire has logs on it, and if this fire has fuel, then it's going to send off sparks. And these sparks are carried by the wind, and then when that spark lands, it's going to ignite a new fire. It's a completely new fire. As long as there's fuel on the fire, it's going to produce a spark, and then it's going to generate a new fire. The same thing is true, that if you have fuel in your mind at the end of this life, then it will produce a spark that is producing a new life or a new consciousness. So those fires in the mind, we refer to them as craving, anger, and ignorance, or the unknowing of true reality. This craving, desire, attachment, the longing, the yearning, the mind holding on, wanting things to be a certain way. This is what's actually causing your discontent feelings. The anger, the sadness, the frustration, and all those other discontent feelings is being caused by the cravings, desires, attachments, the wants, the expectations. Whereas if you get what you want, you get pleasant feelings. If you don't get what you want, you get the painful feelings. But you can uproot that and eradicate it from the mind, and your mind will be peaceful and your mind will be joyful. But if you die with craving in your mind, that's the fuel. That's going to produce that spark that leads to the next life. And then based on the condition of your mind, it's going to determine which realm you're born into and in what condition you exist in that particular realm. So it's not somebody else that's determining what happens to you. It's your own decisions that's determining what happens. You can make wise decisions in this life to produce beneficial results in your life. You can experience wholesome results through making wise decisions. But when you lack wisdom, which the unenlightened mind does, you'll naturally make unwise decisions that lead to unwholesome results. So anything unwholesome that's happening in your life, this is all from decisions that you make. If you don't see that now, you can learn to be able to see that everything you experience is based on your decisions. Whereas if you continue to blame other people for the things that you experience, you have no control to improve your life because everything is based on what everybody else is doing. Or if what you're experiencing in life is destiny or fate, or if it's good luck or bad luck, You have no ability to change your life. You have no ability to improve your life because it's your destiny. It's your fate. It's your good luck or bad luck. But when you don't subscribe to that and you can see true reality, that when you make a decision, it has a certain effect, or when you make a certain choice or decision, it's an action that leads to a certain result. This is called the natural law of karma, or some people refer to it as karma. The word karma is in the Sanskrit language. The original language that the teachings of the Buddha are captured in is the Pali language. So the word karma is used there. And this means cause and effect, or action and result, the results of your decisions. If this word translated to just one English word, I would just use that English word because it'd be much easier for everybody. But it doesn't translate to just one English word. So you need to learn about this cause and effect, or this action and result, the results of your decisions. The natural law of karma, it's not punishments and rewards. It's not a mystical, magical thing. It's not black cloud following you around. It's not even about who's to blame or who's at fault. It's just the results of your decisions. Like, for example, why is your hairstyle the way that it is? That was a choice that you made. Right? Nobody else is making that choice for you. You made that choice. Why are you wearing the clothes that you're wearing? This is a choice that you made. There's a certain decision and it leads to a certain result. Why are you sitting here at the temple, or why are you online learning with me? Because this is a decision that you made. It's a choice that leads to a certain result. There's cause and effect, or action and result. Everything that you experience in life is a result of decisions that you make. And when you learn this and you understand this and you can see the truth of this, it's actually very empowering. Because if there's anything in your life that you don't particularly care for, you can make different decisions. You just need to cultivate wisdom and make different decisions, and you will experience different results. But if everything you're experiencing is because of somebody else, or it's destiny, or it's fate, or it's good luck or bad luck, you have no control and no ability to change anything in your life. But by you being able to see the truth more and more, that what you're experiencing is a result of your decisions, then you cultivate wisdom, you make different decisions, and then you experience different results. So if there's anything in your life that you don't particularly care for, cultivate wisdom. Make different decisions, and you will experience different results in your life. It's just a matter of you gradually cultivating the mind and training the mind. So that's what the Buddha's teachings are all about, is helping you awaken to this natural law of karma, or this cause and effect, or action and result. When you awaken to a natural law, you can see the truth for yourself, and you'll naturally make wiser decisions. The same thing is true with the natural law of gravity. At one time, you lacked wisdom, we all did, of this natural law of gravity. So we made unwise decisions. We fell down, we hit our head, we bumped our elbow. We had all kinds of difficulties with the natural law of gravity. So we broke our toys, and we had all kinds of difficulties. We struggled in the world because we didn't understand this natural law of gravity. But by the time we turned 10 or 12 or 14, we awoke to this natural law of gravity, and we started making wiser choices. We started tying our shoes. We started looking at the surface of the sidewalk when we were walking. We started calming down a little bit. We stopped being so giddy and jumping around like little kids. And we even got to the point where we could ride bicycles. We could climb ladders. We could get on airplanes and fly all over the world, because we fully understood the natural law of gravity. Even me today, this glass of water that I have behind me, I choose to put it behind me rather than put it in front of me. Nobody told me to do that. Nobody taught me to do that. It's just because when you have a wisdom of a natural law, you'll naturally make wiser decisions, where I know if I put it here in front of me, then I'm more likely to knock it over and it's going to spill. So naturally, you make wiser decisions when you understand the natural law. So I put it behind me and I've never spilt it. Right? So when you awaken to the natural law of karma, of cause and effect, you can eliminate all the unwholesome results that you're experiencing in your life by cultivating wisdom, and you'll naturally make wiser decisions. So that's what the Buddha is teaching you throughout his teachings, is this natural law of karma. And one of the things that he's teaching you here is he's explaining essentially how heavenly beings can influence you. It's not that they're forcing you to make any particular decision, but just like heavenly beings can influence you, afflicted spirits, hell beings, even human beings can influence you. The people that you choose to spend time around, will influence you. It's still your decision. You need to know wise and unwise decision making, but these beings can attempt to try to influence you in one way or another. And heavenly beings are the same way. They will tend to try to encourage you to do wholesome things. And then beings in the realm of afflicted spirits in the hell realm will try to influence you to do unwholesome things or unwise things because they're interested in causing calamity in the world. But you can choose for yourself through having wisdom of what is wise and what is unwise. Everything that you experience is based on your own free will. You have free will to do everything and anything that you like in the world. But with a lack of wisdom, you'll tend to make unwise decisions and it'll produce unwholesome results. Some of that unwholesome result is the anger and the frustration and the agitation and annoyance that the mind experiences because the mind lacks wisdom of what's truly causing these feelings in the mind. So the Buddha is helping you awaken to what's truly happening in your own mind and in the world around you so that now you can make wise decisions to train your mind, uproot those pollutions, and then experience improved results in your life. So this is just a short little chapter where he's essentially sharing that heavenly beings are attempting to influence you to do essentially positive things. Whether you choose to do those things or not, it's up to you. But you might have these heavenly beings come around and attempt to encourage you to do wholesome things. And you may or may not even know that that's actually occurring. So do you guys have any questions on this chapter? We need to change the batteries on that one, huh? There's some more batteries there if you guys need to change those.
Thank you, David. So there's always implicit in some of these explanations is there's and in your verbal explanation there's a reference to a you being reborn. Mm-hmm. But not the body, not the mind, because that was just in the human form. And therefore this, and so there is something, some aspect, for want of a better word, transferring from this existence into another realm, mm-hmm. this one or an animal realm or something. Mm-hmm. I know it's just words, but does the Buddha describe the characteristics of that thing which is being transferred from one existence, one realm to another realm? Mm-hmm. I mean, some traditions could refer to it as a soul or, yes, I'm just curious if there's any comment on that.
Yeah. So there's cravings and residual memories that move from one life to the next. As you know from the universal truth of non-self, there is no you, there is no me, there's no I, right? That's what you're learning as part of that universal truth. But we use this language of English. We need to use language that you'll understand. And this language is really unfitting to fully describe 100% of what's actually truly occurring. So we might say you are reborn, right? But then you understand from the universal truth of non-self that there is no you. So the way that I refer to this cycle of rebirth, because during the lifetime of the Buddha, or at least in the Pali Canon, the word samsara is used, and people are translating that to the cycle of rebirth. This is what people are translating the word samsara to, the cycle of rebirth. But when you look at the teachings of the Buddha on the cycle of rebirth and what people are referring to as samsara or the cycle of rebirth, the better way to explain this is the cycle of new existence, because it's a completely new body, it's a completely new mind every single time. But what's moving from one life to the next is craving and residual memories. This is why a human being in this life, you can have recall of things that happened in your previous life. Some people have experienced deja vu. Have you ever experienced deja vu? Do you know what deja vu is? Where you're in this life and you're doing something and you're like, oh my goodness, this feels so familiar, like you've done it before, but you know it wasn't in this life that you've ever done that. This is like a brand new place you've never even been to before. And you know, like, oh my goodness, I feel so familiar. And you know it wasn't in this life. This is your residual memory surfacing and reminding you that, hey, you've done this before in a previous life. But it's not you. It's not this same being. It's not the same body and the same mind. It's just that that this mind has cravings and residual memories from a previous life, and those are bubbling up, and now you're able to recall those and remember those. The way that I think about it is think about it as cardboard boxes. You have these individual lives that are cardboard boxes. Let's say person A or being A is one cardboard box. It's a certain size, a certain shape, a certain color, a certain texture. And you've got certain contents in this cardboard box. At the end of this life, this cardboard box is going to disintegrate, but the contents are still there. Right? You still got those cravings and residual memories. So now those cravings and residual memories find a new cardboard box. And now this cardboard box B, it's a completely different size, different color, different shape, different texture. And now it's got these new contents. So there hasn't really been anything that's been reborn because it's a brand new cardboard box. And this cardboard box is like the mind. That's what I'm describing as the mind. But none of that is you. It's not who you are. So while there's these multiple lives that spawn from one to the next, to the next, to the next, you can almost think of it like individual candles, that you have one candle that burns all the way down to the bottom of the candle, and then there's a spark that lights the next candle. And now that candle burns all the way down, and then there's a spark that lights the next candle. Each of these candles are completely different, completely unique, completely on its own, but it's the spark from one candle that lights the next candle. And it's the same thing about your life, that one life leads to the next, leads to the next, leads to the next. And it's the contents of the mind that are moving from one mind to the next. Okay. Not seeing any other questions anywhere. Oh, you have a question, Junko? Go ahead.
Hello. My question is about third eye. So I wondered what kind of people have a third eye, or what condition to reach to the third eye, and how to reach the third eye.
Sure. So here, the word that's being used is divine eye and also third eye. Some people call this the spiritual eye or an inward looking eye. The reason why is that as you're moving to this higher consciousness, as you're eliminating the pollution of your mind, you become very introspective and very reflective. You can look inward at your own mind. Sometimes as you're going on this path, you can get bombarded with all these thoughts that are coming into your mind. This is because now you're starting to be more reflective and inward looking, where before you got on this path, you weren't necessarily that way. You were just kind of going through life, just kind of making a bunch of decisions. But as you start training your mind with meditation and a lot of these other teachings, your mind can start looking inward on itself. We call this the third eye or the divine eye, the spiritual eye, the inward looking eye. And you're able to see more of this life. And sometimes you can see more of your previous lives too. Not everybody that gets to enlightenment will observe their past lives, but this is what produces that, the third eye. It's not literally an actual physical eye like these two eyes, but we typically associate it with between the eyebrows. That's where people will typically associate it with. But it's this inward looking eye where you can be reflective. And as you open up this third eye by moving to this higher and higher consciousness, by eradicating more and more pollution, not only can you look inward and see more, but you can see more of the world around you. And you can start to understand this interconnectivity between one being and another. This is where beings oftentimes are more and more interested in practicing harmlessness, because you start understanding this interconnectivity about how when you make a decision, it affects somebody else. It affects other beings. And then when you affect other beings with your unwise decisions where you're causing harm, then that harm comes back to you because those beings are interested in harming you. But when you make wise decisions that are harmless, now you can get to a point where beings aren't interested in harming you, and you experience only wholesome results coming back to you. So this is what the third eye is. It's kind of having introspection and being able to look inward, but then also being able to see the wider interconnectivity between all beings. And this is something that you're going to need as you move closer and closer to enlightenment. You're going to need to be introspective and look inward.
Thank you so much. So maybe in the as a result of the cultivating my mind, or so the while so so sometimes so in the process of enlightenment, so someone might recognize or notice, oh, I might have a third eye. It's a weird question, but I could say like that.
I think you've been in classes with me when I've discussed the jhanas, right?
Sure.
The jhanas. That's okay. I'll start from here. So there's these preliminary phases that the mind experiences before it gets to the first stage of enlightenment. There's 4 individual stages of enlightenment, but there's these 4 phases that the mind goes through prior to getting to the first stage of enlightenment. We refer to them as the jhanas. This is where your mind has absorbed a certain amount of meditation, and you've had a certain amount of mental absorption where your mind has absorbed the teachings and you're practicing the teachings. And as your mind's moving through these jhanas, which you can actually see because the Buddha describes them, and you can see the qualities of your mind experiencing those, you can notice that these heightened qualities are coming into the mind as your mind's moving through these jhanas. One of the things that happens, for example, in the second jhana is prior to the second jhana, you have a conscious mind and you have a subconscious mind. And that conscious mind is polluted, but your subconscious mind is very heavily polluted. If you've ever been talking to somebody and you just blurted something out and you were like, why did I say that? That was so silly of me. I don't think that way. This is your subconscious mind sending something up to your conscious mind, and now you just kind of blurt it out. It's not what you think. It's not how you feel. It's not something you've ever even maybe considered before, but you kind of just blurt it out, and you're like, that was so silly of me. Why did I say that? This is your polluted subconscious mind sending something up to your conscious mind that you then just blurt out. By the time you get to the second jhana, you have this oneness of mind, or this unification of mind, where you can observe the entire mind. There's no longer a conscious mind and a subconscious mind. It's become one mind at this point. This is where the third eye opens up. This is where you become very introspective and inward looking. So as you train your mind in the core central teaching of the Buddha, which is called the Eightfold Path, as you're putting that together more and more, and you move into the first jhana and then into the second jhana, that's where the third eye actually opens up. When your mind moves into that second jhana, you start becoming very introspective. And you even have some of this in the first jhana too, actually. You become very introspective, and the Buddha calls it thinking and pondering, where before you were on the path to enlightenment, you might have just been plowing through the world, kind of knocking down the trees, burning up the forest. At least I know that's what I was doing. I was plowing through the world, knocking down trees, burning up the forest, looked behind me, saw all this destruction, smelled all this smoke. I'm like, who lit the fire? Well, it was me who lit the fire because of all my decisions, right? But when you get on the path to enlightenment and you start practicing to a certain degree, you start being much more careful about the decisions that you're making. You become much more thoughtful about the decisions that you're making, because you realize any decision you make, it's going to affect somebody else. And this is where that thinking and pondering comes in, where before you weren't thinking about the things that you were doing necessarily, or if you were thinking about it, you didn't have enough wisdom to be able to make wise decisions. But once you learn a certain amount of the teachings of the Buddha and your mind moves into this first jhana, you'll start looking at a certain decision that you're about to make, and you'll start comparing it and contrasting it to the teachings of the Buddha and trying to figure out what would be wisest thing to do here. And that's where you need that introspection, and you need to be able to look inward to determine, what would be wise and what would be unwise. And that's where a teacher comes in, that oftentimes students will reach out to their teacher and ask for help or ask for guidance. And we won't tell you what to do, but we will guide you through the teachings of the Buddha, and then whatever decisions you make is your decisions. So as you're awakening to this wisdom, you'll go through a period of thinking and pondering, or a lot of deep introspection and looking inward. During this time, you can start getting bombardment of thoughts and different things that are coming through your mind. And this is why it's really important to have a really well-developed meditation practice to stabilize the mind and steady the mind. Because as all these things are happening and you're lifting the pollution out of your mind, you start experiencing a lot of things that you've never experienced before. So everybody on the way to enlightenment, they will open their third eye. You can't get to enlightenment without opening the third eye or this divine eye, that it will happen if you get into those jhanas. And by the time you get to the first stage of enlightenment, your third eye is already open.
Thank you so much. So before I thought so third eye, or it said divine eye, but so what I know the word is third eye. I thought that just a kind of a special or special ability person, like spiritual, so it's so different from us. But so you mentioned about kind of the process of getting third eye. It's so different from what I thought, and then so thanks so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah. And different people refer to this different ways. Like I mentioned, you might hear people refer to it as the divine eye, the spiritual eye. The third eye is very common nowadays. The inward looking eye. These are all ways just to refer to that deep reflective nature that the mind develops as you get more awake on the path. All right. All right, so let's move on to this next chapter, which is chapter 82. Is there someone who would like to volunteer to read this one? Sure, go ahead, Steve.
Seven vows for achieving the status of ruler of the heavenly beings. Monks, in the past, when Sakka, ruler of the heavenly beings, was a human being, he was a Brahmin youth named Magga, therefore he is called Maggava. Monks, in the past, when Sakka, ruler of heavenly beings, was a human being, he gave gifts in city after city, therefore he is called Purandara, in the urban donor. Monks, in the past, when Sakka, ruler of heavenly beings, was a human being, he gave gifts considerately, therefore he is called Sakka. Monks, in the past, when Sakka, ruler of heavenly beings, was a human being, he gave a rest house, therefore he is called Vasava. Monks, Sakka, ruler of the heavenly beings, thinks of 1,000 matters in a moment, therefore he is called Sahasaka, 1,000-eyed. Monks, Sakka's wife is the Asura maiden named Suja, therefore he is called Suja Pati, Suja's husband. Monks, Sakka, ruler of heavenly beings, exercises supreme sovereignty and rulership over the Tavatma heavenly beings, therefore he is called ruler of the heavenly beings. Monks, in the past, when Sakka, ruler of the heavenly beings, was a human being, he adopted and undertook 7 vows, by the undertaking of which he achieved the status of Sakka. What were those 7 vows? 1, as long as I live, may I support my parents. 2, as long as I live, may I respect my family elders. 3, as long as I live, may I speak gently. 4, as long as I live, may I not speak argumentatively. 5, as long as I live, may I reside at home with a mind free of the stain of selfishness, freely generous, open-handed, delighting in letting go, devoted to charity, delighting in giving and sharing. 6, as long as I live, may I speak the truth. 7, as long as I live, may I be free from anger, and if anger should arise in me, may I eliminate it, cut it off.
Okay, thank you, Steve. So there's a certain cosmology that existed during the lifetime of the Buddha. What a cosmology is how they think about the world around them in terms of the various realms. During the lifetime of the Buddha, he talked about this heavenly realm, and he broke it up into various categories of different types of heavenly beings. And he did the same thing with hell. He broke it up into many different types of hells. Nowadays, we just think about hell as kind of one big place, or the heavenly realm is just one big place. But during the lifetime of the Buddha, he broke it into various segments or various categories. And he talked about these different beings within each of these realms. You don't actually need to understand and know the various cosmology that existed during the lifetime of the Buddha in order to get to enlightenment. But that's essentially what he's referring to here, is this being Sakka, ruler of the heavenly beings. There's all these different realms in the heavenly realm based on what the Buddha taught, and this being is the one who kind of rules over all of those different beings according to the cosmology that existed during the lifetime of the Buddha. So here, what the Buddha is describing is this being Saka, ruler of the heavenly beings, and how this being conducted itself during its human existences, to understand what it took in order to get to this heavenly existence and how it conducted itself. The ultimate goal of the teachings of the Buddha isn't to get to heaven. That's not the ultimate goal. The ultimate goal is to train your mind to get to enlightenment in this life. Being reborn in heaven, not everybody considers that to be an improved existence, because once you get into the heavenly realm, you still are in the cycle of rebirth. You're still unenlightened. You need to get to enlightenment at that point. And oftentimes beings in the heavenly realm are somewhat complacent because they only experience pleasant feelings. So they tend to lack motivation and encouragement to train their mind and actually get to enlightenment. We're here in the human realm. Not only do we experience pleasant feelings, we experience painful feelings and feelings that are neither painful nor pleasant. So you experience sadness, anger, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, boredom, loneliness, shyness, resentment, jealousy, these other feelings like this. And those tend to be motivators to encourage you to get to enlightenment because you don't like those feelings. So when you're experiencing those types of feelings, it might motivate you to decide to escape from these feelings. But in the heavenly realm, they don't experience those painful feelings. They're only experiencing happiness, excitement, elation, thrill, exhilaration, euphoria. So they tend to lack motivation to actually learn and practice and escape the cycle of rebirth. So therefore, those heavenly beings are oftentimes reborn into other realms, like the hell realm, the afflicted spirit realm, the animal realm, the human realm. They can also be reborn back into the heavenly realm as well. So the Buddha is describing what it took for this being Saka, ruler of the heavenly beings, to move from the human realm into this heavenly realm. And he describes this in other parts of his teachings as well. And the same thing that leads to rebirth in the heavenly realm are the same things that lead to enlightenment. So what I encourage people to do, because the goal isn't to be reborn in heaven, is that whenever you see the Buddha talking about what leads to rebirth in the heavenly realm, you can extract those teachings of things that would be wise for you to practice in this life. So these things that the Buddha is talking about here, about supporting your parents, respecting your elders, speaking gently, not speaking argumentatively, residing at home without selfishness, speaking the truth, being free from anger, all of these are things that you need in order to get to enlightenment. Right? Depending on how you feel about your parents, sometimes people have a very contentious relationship with their parents. This is oftentimes based in your own cravings, desires, attachments. You might want your parents to be a certain way. You might expect your parents to be a certain way. And if they do things the way you want, you have happiness. But when they don't do things the way you want, you might get angry or frustrated or irritated or annoyed or some other discontent feeling. You can actually cultivate wholesome relationships with everybody in your life. You can learn how to do that. It just takes time for your mind to be able to learn how to do that and get rid of your own pollutions so that you're able to interact with others in a wholesome way. So your parents, they brought you up, they fed you, they showed you the world. There's almost this debt of gratitude that the Buddha talks about in relationship to your parents. So no matter what you feel about your parents, which I suspect that there's nobody here that agreed with 100% of what your parents did in your life. I'm pretty sure that none of us agree 100% with what our parents did. But that doesn't mean that they're bad people. It just means that you disagree with maybe what they did in your life. So the Buddha teaches you to have this gratitude and respect for your parents because they brought you into this world and they fed you, they showed you the world, they taught you how to sustain your life. They are your original teachers. Without your parents, you wouldn't be sitting here right now because you wouldn't know how to feed yourself. You wouldn't know how to clothe yourself. You wouldn't know how to bathe yourself. You wouldn't know how to brush your teeth. You wouldn't know so many things. Your parents took you to school. They fed you. They allowed you to do certain things and they taught you. Again, you might disagree with certain things that they did in your life, but nonetheless, they helped you to sustain your life where now you're an adult and you can make your own decisions. So by coming into this human world, this is the ideal existence for you to now be able to train your mind, cultivate the mind, and get to this enlightened mental state where it's peaceful and joyful. So the Buddha teaches in other teachings to have this gratitude or this respect for our parents. And it doesn't mean you agree with everything they do, but you can get to a point where your respect isn't contingent on what other people do. Sometimes people are taught, don't respect others until they respect you first, right? So that person has to earn your respect. This is what some people teach. Like, other people have to earn your respect. Don't respect other people until they respect you first. Well, if everybody in the world followed that exact same teaching, nobody would be respecting anybody, because everybody's holding back and waiting for everyone else to respect each other. And nobody's going to respect anybody until somebody respects you first. Well, if everybody practiced that, nobody would be respecting anybody. So what the Buddha teaches instead is for you to have politeness, kindness, friendliness, and respect for everybody in the world. And that doesn't mean you agree with what they do. You can still disagree with someone's choices and decisions while still being polite, kind, friendly, and respectful to that individual. You're not going to agree with everything that everybody does. Because of the universal truth of impermanence, because we've all had different experiences in life, different people are going to make different decisions. If your love or your respect or your politeness is contingent on somebody has to do things the same way as you, and you have to agree with that person before you can be polite, kind, friendly, and respectful, and before you can love that person, then there's only one person in the world that you're going to love and one person that you're going to respect. Because there's only one person in the world that you're going to agree with 100% of the time. Everybody else, you're going to disagree with them at some point. So if you have your politeness, kindness, friendliness, and respect contingent on that you have to agree with what they do, or your love is contingent on you having to agree with what they do, you can only love yourself. You can only respect yourself, because you're the only person that you're ever going to agree with 100% of the time. So it's learning how to love the person while disagreeing with their decisions. And you can get to that point where you disagree with someone's decisions, but you love the person. What love is to have a genuine interest in seeing all beings be well, right? You can love someone, have an interest in seeing them be well, while disagreeing with their choices and decisions. So if I see somebody on the news who has murdered somebody, or they've raped somebody, I can disagree with their decisions. I can disagree with their choosing to murder or choosing to rape somebody, but I can still love the person because I would like to see this person be well. I have a genuine interest in seeing them be well. Sure, they might need to go to prison. They might need to go to jail. They might need to get some programs to learn and understand that it's unwise to kill and to rape people. But just because they chose some unwise decisions and they're doing unwise things doesn't mean I need to hate them, right? The hate doesn't hurt anybody but your own mind. So you get to the point where you see people make different decisions than you, and then you can still love the person. And the parents are an ideal example of this, because oftentimes we grow up with certain expectations and certain things we want from our parents, and we might start having this hostile relationship with our parents because they didn't do everything we wanted them to do. But there's no other being in the world that has done everything you want them to do. It's not possible. So if you can get used to loving the person while disagreeing with the decisions that they make, you can get to a point where you have support and you have love for your parents and respect for your elders and your family, because people who have lived longer than us, they will have certain wisdom that you don't necessarily have. And this can be helpful for you as you learn to respect all people around you. The Buddha teaches to speak gently in other parts of his teachings. When he talks about speaking gently, what this refers to is your tone, your tempo, and your word choice. Whereas if you were harsh and aggressive and bitter and hostile and having animosity towards people, that's all going to come back to you. So he teaches you that it would be wise for you to speak gentle with your tone, your tempo, and your word choice. You guys are here in Thailand. You've been around Thai people. Do you see very many Thai people talk really aggressive and very harsh? You don't see that very frequently because they learn to speak gentle as they're growing up, that it's wise to speak gentle. But depending on the culture that you come from and the environment that you come from, you might speak harsh and aggressive. This might be what you grew up with in your family. I know I did. And if that's the way you were brought up, your mind was conditioned to think that it's wise to be aggressive, harsh, and bitter and hostile with people. And if you do this, this is almost like animalistic instincts, where in an animal world, if another animal does something that you disagree with, you'll growl and you'll roar at that other animal to try to convince that animal to do things your way, because you're trying to fear this other animal to do things your way. Well, in the unenlightened state, in the human world, your mind functions very much like an animal. You might be bitter and harsh and hostile and aggressive with people, trying to fear them into doing things your way. But what this path to enlightenment is about, among other things, is becoming a better and better human being, where you can learn to be a better and better human being, and you can function with harmony and peace and joy with all beings around you. So one aspect of that is to learn to speak gentle. Your tone, your tempo, and your word choice. And this is going to be challenging for you because you have certain cravings, certain wants, certain expectations. So when you talk to your parents or your siblings or your life partner or your children or something like this, you might find it really challenging to talk to them gentle, because you have what's called craving, desire, attachment. You're wanting them to be a certain way. And when they're the way you want, you can be happy. But when they don't do things the way you want, you might be bitter and harsh and hostile in those particular periods of time. But what the Buddha teaches you is to speak gentle in all situations. Because if you're bitter and harsh and hostile with your parents, with your brothers and sisters, with your neighbors, with your coworkers, your boss, something like this, all that's going to come back to you, and you're going to experience that unwholesome result of you being bitter and harsh and hostile, you putting that out. That's exactly what's going to come back to you. But by learning to speak gentle, you'll experience more and more people speaking to you in that same exact way. And I'm sure you'll enjoy that if people speak gentle with you. And then he talks about not speaking argumentatively. As long as you argue with people and you fight with people, they're going to fight with you right back. You can't eliminate the hostility and the aggression in your life by you being harsh and hostile and aggressive. If you would like to eliminate this harshness and this hostility that comes to you in certain situations, you're going to need to first train your mind to not be argumentative. Sometimes people's ego is in there, and you might be standing your ground, and you might be arguing and fighting until death. This is, again, what an animal does. When an animal experiences something that it disagrees with, it'll fight to death until it dies, because that's what an animal does. And that's what the unenlightened human mind does, is it'll stand there and fight and argue, advocating for its position and trying to convince other people to do things your way. But what you learn through the wisdom of the teachings of the Buddha is that it's very unwise to argue and be bitter and harsh and hostile. It doesn't produce anything beneficial. And you can see from your own life, whenever you've done that, your mind has been all upset and your mind's been agitated and annoyed. You've damaged relationships. People have chosen to leave out of your life at different points. So the Buddha teaches you not to be argumentative, to train your mind to be calm and cool and collected. If somebody wants to argue with you, just walk away. They can't argue with you if you're not there, right? It's kind of like if somebody picks up a rubber ball of anger and they start throwing it around the room. Well, if you pick up the rubber ball of anger and you throw it around the room, and then they throw it around the room, and then you throw it around the room, next thing you know, you got these rubber balls bouncing around the room, and the room's full of anger and hostility. But if you choose to do something different, because you know that doesn't work, you've tried that before. If you do something different, when somebody picks up the rubber ball of anger and they throw it around the room, just watch it lose its energy and roll to the corner. No need for you to continue to argue or even start to argue. You can choose to walk away and ignore it. But you'll have a hard time doing that if you haven't trained your mind. So training your mind to be able to control your mind and restrain your mind is key to being able to live in the world without arguing. And then the Buddha teaches to practice generosity. Generosity is helping you to eliminate your cravings, desires, attachments, the longing, the yearning, the wanting, the expecting. The breathing mindfulness meditation helps you to do that, but then also giving and sharing helps you to do that as well. So the Buddha teaches generosity, that you should share your time, your effort, your energy, your resources, more than is strictly required in any given situation, without any expectation of anything in return. And this will train your mind to let go. Because when you have craving, desire, attachment in your mind will hold on, and the mind can become somewhat selfish. But when you practice generosity, you can live open-handedly, where you're sharing with other people. And this will help your mind to let go. And then speaking the truth is always wise, because then people can see you as dependable and trustworthy. If you lie, which we all have lied in the past at different times, you know that people discovered those lies, and then they considered you to be untrustworthy and undependable. And now in your personal and professional relationships, you struggled. Or if you've done a lot of lying, you had to figure out what you said to one person versus what you said to another, what you said to another. Your mind is almost obsessively trying to figure out, what did you say to one person versus another versus another? You wouldn't be able to get to peace and joy if your mind was lying, because you're going to have to constantly figure out, what have you said to one person versus another? And you're going to experience the unwholesome results of those lies coming back to you. So the Buddha teaches us not to lie. And he does this not as a rule, not as a commandment, but helping you see wise decision making, that it produces wholesome results in your life, or wholesome karma. And then this last one is training your mind to eliminate your anger. There's certain meditations, not the one that I taught you this morning, but there's others that will help you eliminate your anger, your hostility, your frustration, your agitation. If you have negative self-talk in the mind, sometimes people have diminishing, degrading self-talk in their own mind. There's this meditation that helps you eliminate this anger and ill will towards others, but also directed towards yourself too. That's what that negative, diminishing self-talk does, is it's this anger directed at this being who you are. So there's a meditation to be able to help you to eliminate that. So these same things that the Buddha is talking about, this being that is in this heavenly realm that they're practicing, these are the same things that are going to help you get to enlightenment as well. The goal isn't to get to heaven. The goal is to get to enlightenment in this life. So whenever you see a discourse where the Buddha is talking about the heavenly realm and what these beings have done in order to get there, you can extract those same teachings to realize it's wise for you to practice those in this life as well. Any questions on this one? Yes, ma'am. If you could use a microphone. There you go.
Oh, okay. I have a basic question that is not really related to the content of this article and chapter. I wonder that is I think this is the explanation or the illustration of the original scripture of the Buddha, right? Mm-hmm. And is there any other kind of explanation and understanding of Buddha? I think it is really a basic or a stupid question. You
mean like the Buddha himself?
Yeah.
Yeah, the Buddha has extensive amount of teachings because he lived for 80 years and he taught from the age of 35 until 80. And during those 45 years of teaching, he taught extensively. And what we have left of his teachings is 45 books that are this thick. So there's extensive amount of teachings. And usually what I will be doing, like tomorrow and in other classes and courses, is teaching you those core central teachings that are going to help you get to enlightenment. This particular program is different in that we go deep into the words of the Buddha, and we just happen to be in volume 11. So this is your first time here, so you're learning about the realms of existence. But the Buddha himself, he was a prince that was destined to become a king, and he chose to walk away from that life because he wasn't interested in ruling over misery and despair that he saw in the kingdom. He was interested in helping people escape that misery and despair. So he went on this journey to try to figure out how to escape this misery and despair. And he figured out how to do it. He figured out how to get to the peace and the joy in his own mind. And then he shared those teachings with others to be able to help them learn how to get to that peace and joy. So his family members were ordaining with him. People in the community were ordaining with him. There were countless people who got to enlightenment during his life. And then after his death, his teachings were preserved in such a way that countless more people could get to enlightenment after his death. And even today, there's people who are actually enlightened based on his original teachings. And you can see that this is actually happening because you know what it feels like to experience anger and frustration and all these other discontent feelings. And as your mind's gradually improving and getting to this enlightened mental state, you can see the improvement to the condition of your mind. That's where his teachings are very rare and very unique, that you're learning now, you're reflecting now to independently verify them, and you're practicing now. and you see the results now in this life, that your mind's becoming more peaceful and more joyful. There's a lot of people who over the 2,500 year history, because he died 2,500 years ago, that have changed and modified his teachings. So you can go to temples where you're going to see rites and rituals and ceremonies and worship. You're going to see a lot of belief and superstition and auspicious things, but the Buddha never taught any of that kind of stuff. This is things that have been changed and modified in his teachings. But if you look at his original teachings, which is what I share in all these books, you can see the truth of what he actually taught and what he didn't teach. And then I encourage students to never believe it, to learn it, to reflect on it, to independently verify it and practice it and see the truth for yourself. So for example, just this little teaching that we have here, like if you learned what I shared on each one of these things, and then you reflected on it, and you're like, you know what? It would be nice if I supported my parents. It would be great if I respected my elders. You know, it would be better if I spoke gently. That would produce better results in my life. And yeah, if I didn't argue, that would produce better relationships. And if I had generosity, yeah, I could see how I could give and share, and I could train my mind to let go. I could speak the truth, and then people would see me as trustworthy. And yeah, getting rid of this anger would be really wonderful for my life. This is like reflecting and seeing the truth. But then when you start implementing these teachings in your life and you actually start doing this, making wise decisions, that's where the real transformation happens. And you see the transformation to your own mind and to your life, that you start getting along and being more harmonious with all beings. So this is what the Buddha did, is he didn't teach rules or commandments. He didn't teach beliefs. He didn't teach rites and rituals and ceremonies. He's providing you the wisdom of how to awaken to this peaceful and joyful mental state. But whether you choose to do that or not, it's up to you. It's your choice. If someone's done with the anger, they're done with the frustration, they're done with the exhaustion and the tiredness that comes with walking around with a polluted mind, you can uproot all of that from your mind and get to the point where you have sustainable energy all throughout your day, and you don't have the bitterness and hostility and animosity in the mind. And you'll see that your relationships are much better. You can see that you experience improved relationships and improved life, improved condition of mind. But it's just a matter of learning and practicing to be able to get to that point. So it's gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress that leads to these results. One of the biggest myths about the life of the Buddha is people think he sat under a tree, he meditated, and then he instantly got to enlightenment. But he doesn't describe that. He says just the opposite. He says that his enlightenment was not instantaneous, that it was gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. And you know that to be true because everything you've ever done in life has been the same way. Whether it's learning to read and write and speak English, that's been a gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress for all of us. Whether it's your job or occupation, it's been gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. So getting to enlightenment is exactly the same way. And that's why people would come to a place like this to be able to learn and grow and develop. And it's helping your mind to gain wisdom that then you can transform your mind through making wise decisions. Right. Yeah, so the question for those of you guys online was, is this book from the original teachings of the Buddha to, without any belief, to be able to help you improve your wisdom? And the answer is yes. This is volume 11, so a lot of you guys that are here, you haven't learned with me before, so you haven't learned the core central teachings. This isn't where a student will typically start, but as you learn all the teachings up to this point, then students a year and a half in, 2 years in, they will start learning about the different realms of existence. Because as I mentioned, as you have, if you have learned for a year, year and a half, 2 years with me, and you've learned the original teachings and you're starting to uproot those pollutions out of your mind, you will potentially start experiencing residual memories of your past lives, or you might experience communication with beings from these other realms, or some people can even see these beings, heavenly beings, afflicted spirits, hell beings. So you can experience all these different things. And if you didn't understand the cycle of rebirth in these realms of existence, you would feel very shaken up during that time. You could feel insane or like you're going crazy if you didn't understand the cycle of rebirth. So this is helping you to gain wisdom, to understand the world around you, and then you'll make wiser decisions where you won't think that you're going insane or crazy when you start experiencing residual memories of your past lives, when you start experiencing communication with these beings potentially, or you start seeing these beings with your own eyes, and other people can't see it, but you can, because your mind's lifted out this pollution. You've moving to this higher consciousness, and now you can experience these things where other people aren't necessarily experiencing it. And nowadays, people would label you as crazy, and they might try to put you in a mental hospital and give you medicine. But if you can keep your mind stable and steady through training your mind, and you understand this is all completely normal, then you can maintain your stability and your steadiness in your mind. Mm-hmm. And it's not based on belief. I've actually had communication and interaction and been able to see beings in these various realms. So this is how I know that it's true 100%. But each individual person needs to be able to learn and practice and be able to know the truth for themselves. I had all these different experiences all throughout my life, not understanding what they were. And at different times, I thought I was going crazy and I was insane. But it wasn't until I found the teachings of the Buddha and I started reading, and I was like, oh my goodness, he's explaining exactly what I've experienced and what I know to be true. So sometimes if you read something like this, then you have the experience, you're kind of unsure. Maybe this conditions your mind to have those experiences. But I had just the opposite experience. I had these experiences first. The earliest one was when I was 8 years old. And then all the way through my life, I had all these different experiences. And then when I started studying the teachings of the Buddha, I was like, oh my goodness, it all makes sense now. All these years I've been struggling with trying to understand this world around me and what I've been experiencing, and different people told me I was crazy when I knew exactly, like, no, I had this experience. So the Buddhist teachings explained it to me in a way that made complete sense. So that's why it can help you to really stabilize your mind. And it's not based on belief. Mm-hmm. Edmund, you have a question?
Yeah, thanks. A few years ago, I worked in a role where I was working with, as in a therapeutic role, I was working with people who had the most difficult early years experiences, some of the most horrendous kind of abuses and things like that. And it felt to me over long periods of time working with people that wisdom would suggest that they remove themselves from certain situations, some of them family situations, to do all the necessary healing, because some of the difficulties they experienced as children were carried on into adulthood. Maybe not the exact specifics, but the sort of dynamic of things remained. And when I look at this and sort of maybe the first one, perhaps being supportive of parents, conjures up an idea, like some old idea that, parents are all good and all that. I know you suggested that it's not always the case, but some of that just seems almost risky to me when I read that. I know it's very complicated because you have very small children who are abused terribly. They're also dependent on those people abusing them for care, for shelter, food, and all these other, and love, even corrupted maybe. But I don't know. Sometimes I think that needs to be almost fleshed out a bit. Support parents and respect family elders, but sometimes that has to be done with great wisdom, and maybe from a distance. Maybe, I don't know.
Okay, so it's good that you're asking this question, because it's unwise to cling to your perception and read into what the Buddha is saying here, because based on what you've been taught in the past, your mind can cling to those certain perceptions and those certain assumptions, because what you were saying there is not what the Buddha is saying, that all parents are good and that everybody should always do everything for their parents. That's not what the Buddha taught, because remember, he understood the universal truth of impermanence. He understood that some parents treat their children wonderfully, other parents treat their children maybe horribly, and then there's other parents who just, it's kind of blase, right? So anything and everything that the Buddha taught is based on what's called discernment. Discernment is wise decision making. You always need to practice wise decision making. So if you're in a family environment where, say, your parents are either physically or sexually abusing you, it would be unwise to continue to stay in that environment, and you need to get out of there. The Buddha isn't saying that, oh yeah, support your parents even though they're physically abusing you or sexually abusing you. This would be unwise. So there's always discernment, which is wise decision making. You need to be able to see this natural law very closely. Supporting your parents, like for me, I grew up with all these different types of abuse growing up as a child, and I had a lot of resentment and hostility and animosity in my mind toward my family. But this didn't help me at all in life, having that bitterness and hostility and animosity. What I eventually got to is I realized that, okay, these people were doing things that they thought were wise at that time, and that's what they chose to do based on their experiences. It doesn't mean I'm a bad person. It doesn't mean I have to define myself through the abuse that I experienced. And I could get to a point where I could just have appreciation for the fact that I was in the world, and that my family at least gave me clothing, they gave me shelter, they gave me food, they gave me water, I at least had schooling and these kinds of things. So rather than hold on to the bitterness, the resentment, and the hostility that I was growing up with based on the things that were happening in my life, I chose to let all that go and get to a point where I could be peaceful and joyful and just be appreciative of the fact that I'm in this world, and at least my parents did enough that I could sustain my life. And now as an adult, I can make decisions for myself. But I still did what the Buddha is teaching here, which is supported my parents, meaning I would like to see good things happen for them. So even though my stepfather, for example, would beat me regularly based on my mom asking him to do that, when he got leukemia and he was in the hospital, I went to go see him and say, hey, spend time with him, help him, talk to him, let him know that I forgive him for everything that he did in the past, and that's all in the past. When my mom started to experience different difficulties and struggles in her life, because both of them had a lot of hostility and aggression in their mind, so it didn't just start and end with me, it was in other situations too, and they were having all kinds of difficulties in their life, and both of them died very young. My stepdad died when he was 63, and my mom died when she was 66. This was a result of their decisions, that as they were aging, they were bitter and harsh and hostile to a certain degree, and they both kind of let that go as they went on, but they still had a lot of that in their younger years, and it really weighed on their body, and that's what's going to produce a shorter lifespan. The more angry and hostile and bitter you are, it's going to put a burden on the body's organs, and you're going to have a shorter lifespan. So by the time my mom died, we had a fine relationship. Same thing with my stepfather as well. I forgave them for all that stuff, but I still supported them. When my mom would call me and say, hey, David, I'm having all kinds of difficulties. I'm having this problem. What do you suggest? I would help her, right? I let the past be in the past. No need to hold on to that. So this is what you can get to, because holding on to the hostility and animosity doesn't help you. It just burdens your own mind, keeps you trapped in that anger and hostility over and over and over and over again. So that's what the Buddha is teaching you ultimately. So don't read into his words and think that when he says support your parents, that means like in all situations, at all costs, no matter what happened in your past, always, kiss up to your parents, so to speak, right? That's not what he's teaching you at all. So there's always this discernment or wise decision making that you need to do. So like in my mom's situation, because we had so much bitterness and hostility as I was growing up, there were times where in my adult life, when she was bitter and harsh and hostile, I'd have to step away from the relationship. I'd put it on pause for 3 years sometimes, 5 years sometimes. I wouldn't talk to her because I needed to go away and work on my own mind, and she needed to work on her mind. And then we would come back together, and then she'd be bitter, harsh, and hostile. And I would say, Mom, I value our relationship too much. I'm not interested in being bitter and harsh and hostile with you as I've done in the past. I'm going to get off the phone now and let you think about what you just said, and we'll talk another time. I love you, Mom. Where in the past, I would have been bitter and harsh and hostile and aggressive right back, and it didn't solve anything. So when I started doing something different, then I experienced different results, and I still supported them, right? I still encourage them to do well. And this is one of the things you can do. But not everybody's going to choose to do that. Depending on how significant the abuse was, you may not ever go back to your parents and have a relationship with your parents. So don't look at this as like the Buddha is giving a rule or a commandment saying in all situations, always do this, because that would be a permanent decision. And he understands impermanence, that things are constantly changing. Mm-hmm. Anything else you guys would like to talk about related to this one? Okay, well, a lot of times in our classes, we go all the way through and we study 10 chapters. In other classes, depending on what the discussion is, we just study wherever we study. Sometimes here, like we study 2 chapters. Sometimes we study 5 or 6 or 8. I'm going to end class here because it's 11 o'clock. If you guys have things that you would like to talk about, you're welcome to come talk to me after class. You're welcome to message me. I have a Facebook group where students will post questions into in order to get help, and I will help you. Nobody else answers your questions there, just me. Sometimes students schedule personal guidance where you can meet with me online, or you can meet with me in person, or you can send me private messages. So I'm here to help you if you would like to learn and practice and understand how to get to this enlightened mental state. As I mentioned, this isn't where students will typically start. The group learning program is a much better place, or one of our courses or retreats where we have foundational teachings. That's a much better place to start. Tomorrow in our group learning program at 9 a.m. and 9 p.m. Online, we're going to be teaching chapter 23 of volume 1. And what this chapter is about is it's about the symbolism and imagery that you see in certain Buddhist artwork and certain temples, to be able to help you understand what this imagery is and be able to connect it to the teachings of the Buddha. So like this symbol behind me, you may not know what this symbol is, but through learning the symbolism of the teachings, you can experience the ability to remind yourself about the teachings of the Buddha. So we're coming up to the end of that program, and this is a really fun chapter because I'm going to be showing you guys a bunch of pictures and things like this and teaching you about the symbolism that you'll see in these various temples, so that when you go to the temple, it's not just like, oh, pretty picture, let me take that picture. It's actually has meaning to you, the various artwork, architecture, and symbolism that you see in the temples. So I'm going to be teaching you guys that tomorrow at 9 a.m. and we'll start with meditation and then we'll move into that. And then on Wednesday in the group learning program, I'm going to be guiding students in meditation. Starting on Monday morning, I'm going to be teaching a course for the next 5 days from Monday to Friday. It's going to be from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. This course is called Harmony in Relationships. I'm going to be teaching all the various teachings that an individual would need in order to develop harmony in your relationships. Because by the time you get to enlightenment, you won't have any disharmony in any of your relationships. All your relationships will be at ease. You won't have bitterness and hostility and aggression in your mind or in your relationships. But you need to learn how to do that. So we're spending next week to help students to learn how to develop harmony in your relationships. You can register for this course online, or you can just show up here at the temple. You can also join by Zoom. I'm not going to be live streaming this course, but I will have Zoom open and students can join by Zoom. And it's open, available to the public. There's no cost or anything. Anything that I do, whether it's books, videos, podcasts, personal guidance, classes, courses, retreats, it's all available at no cost. So you're welcome to attend tomorrow on Sunday. You're welcome to attend any part of the course next week that you would like to attend. You're welcome to just come in, or you could register online. So if there's anything that you would like to talk with me about, feel free to let me know. I'm here to help all of you guys. In the meantime, have a very lovely and wonderful rest of the day. Thank you for coming. Appreciate that you've had dedication to learn the teachings of the Buddha, and perhaps we'll see you in a future class. Enjoy the rest of your day. Sawadee khap, sawadee khap, sawadee khap. thank you again for watching. Enjoy your meditation. Look forward to seeing you online and answering any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.